Venezuelan and Colombian presidents signed a partial trade agreement aiming to strengthen bilateral relations between the two countries. Search and rescue efforts continue in Türkiye and Syria on Thursday as 3 more people were found alive in rubble more than 10 days after the quake. Another train carrying toxic material derailed outside the U.S. city of Detroit, Michigan. It is the 5th such incident in the country in the last 2 weeks. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro Moros, and his Colombian counterpart, Gustavo Petro, signed a partial trade agreement on Thursday during a meeting at the Atanasio Girardot International Bridge in the Venezuelan state of El Táchira. Both presidents celebrated the strengthening of the 28th Partial Scope Agreement on bilateral trade, which seeks to stimulate economic integration between the two countries. This agreement is in addition to the Bilateral Investment Protection Accord recently signed by both countries. The Colombian president, Gustavo Petro, stressed that the signing of the partial range agreement is one more step in the integration between Bogotá and Caracas.
This is another step towards integration that should never have been suspended. I believe that the process of integration, which in some ways has not been without problems, should never have been suspended between our two countries that have such a rich common history, Venezuela and Colombia.
During the same day, the National Assembly of Venezuela approved an agreement for the reciprocal promotion and protection of investments with Colombia, while ratifying Carlos Martinez as the new ambassador to Colombia. The deputies emphasized that the agreement aims at the union and economic integration of both countries in the commercial and monetary direction. Likewise, they stressed that any investment can be developed within the framework of the current law is a contribution to continue consolidating the economic growth of the nation. In El Salvador, 6 out of 10 people will support the continuous re-election of President Nayib Bukele, revealed a survey this Thursday. The poll was conducted by the Centro de Estudios Ciudadanos of the Francisco Gavidia University. According to the results, 62.2% of those questioned agree with the continuous re-election of the President Bukele. However, they also indicate that the ruling party will have obstacles in maintaining the predominance in the majorities or municipal councils. The sampling also indicated that 72.7% of the Salvadorans consider that Bukele's government is on the right track when a 2.4% growth of the economy is projected and a decrease in inflation for this year of 4.1% lower than the 7.3% reached in 2022. CARICOM leaders in the Bahamas agreed to reduce import costs during the 44th regular summit of the multilateral organization. After the meeting, CARICOM's Secretariat General informed that the member states committed to reduce food import costs by 25% by 2025. The Secretariat noted that the Bahamas government has earmarked $100 million to national agriculture in order to reduce its dependence on imports. In Ecuador, the lack of credibility and rejection towards the government of Guillermo Lasso increases in the midst of new denunciations for the alleged links of these political operators with drug trafficking and the Albanian mafia. Our correspondent in Ecuador, Henry Pillajo, with the details.
The image of President Lasso's government has not recovered. His few public appearances and his speeches on national television have not been well received by the population, especially in the context of the allegations of corruption involving his trusted men, including his brother-in-law Danilo Carrera.
This is a government that has had little credibility on a regular basis. It has been politically beaten by the elections, and in the face of allegation of corruption, it reacts in the most chaotic way. It is a government that is desperate and has no capacity or credibility for action.
The changes and ministers' resignations in the government do not seem to be a solution for the social and political crisis.
The changes that have been made are not enough. What we are looking for is for the president to really create policies in favor of all citizens in education, health, and public safety. So far, the president of the republic has not worked for the needs of the Ecuadorian people.
Analysts point out that the government's weakness could deepen if it does not implement policies for the benefit of the people.
Right now, we don't have political alternatives or democratic solutions to this crisis, which is evident due to the weakness of the government and by all the scandals that are coming out.
At the same time, new accusation and interference of Guillermo Lazo's closest men, who would have links with drug trafficking, are being reported, convincing evidence based on which some assembly members are seeking the resignation of the president or to request an impeachment trial.
The links that Mr. Danilo Carrera has with Mr. Ruben Cherres and Mr. Ditan Hig Albanese with the Albanian mafia and drug trafficking. We are working on that. It will be presented by the Commission, and what we are looking for is the impeachment of resignation of the President.
In the wave of accusation, representatives of social and student organizations in a more radical position begin to raise their voices in protest.
Our position is one of absolute rejection and of demanding that Lazo step down, that he resign from his post.
The resounding no vote of the Ecuadorian population has practically turned into a revoking vote to the government of Guillermo Lazo.
At the same time, the Temporary Commission for Truth, Justice and the Fight Against Corruption, in the outrageous case called The Great Godfather, continues to meet with former government ministers as part of the investigation process.
TeleSUR Ecuador.
Let's take a short break, but first, remember you can follow us on our TikTok account at TeleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In Türkiye, a 5.2 magnitude earthquake was recorded Thursday night in Hatay province, with epicenter located 19 kilometers from the city of Uzunbag. According to the U.S. Geological Survey data, the quake had a depth of 10 kilometers, collapsing several previously damaged buildings. The quake was felt in northwestern Syria and Lebanon. The Hatay region is one of the provinces most affected by the February 6 earthquake, in which more than 36,000 people were killed. Search and rescue efforts continue in Turkey and Syria. On Thursday, 3 more people were found alive in rubble more than 10 days after the earthquakes. According to the latest reports, a 17-year-old girl was rescued alive on Thursday after spending 248 hours trapped under the rubble of a building in the province of Kahramanmaraş, where the epicenter of the earthquake was registered. As of Friday, the joint death toll between both countries exceeds 44,000 fatal victims. On Thursday, the humanitarian mission of the government of Venezuela continues to deliver the food for the victims for the earthquake in Türkiye. The civil protection team, made up of 25 search and rescue specialists, delivered a new batch of humanitarian aid that includes a shipment of 11 tons of food, as well as medicines and medical supplies for the assistance of the survivors in Adiyaman. We stay on topic. The Syrian government reports over 6,000 people dead and over 5,500 wounded in the country as a consequence of the earthquakes that shook the nation on February the 6th. These are the latest updates provided by Syrian authorities on Friday, as search and rescue operations continue after the earthquake that affected 4 provinces. The government says that 11 days after the quake, they are advancing with the task of debris removal with the help of international teams, despite the sanctions imposed by the United States against the Syrian people represent. And another Iranian plane carrying relief aid for those affected by the quake arrived at Aleppo International Airport in Syria. The head of the Iranian Red Crescent Society, Pir Hossein Kolivand, offered his condolences to the Syrian people over their difficult circumstances, while he prayed for mercy upon the victims and wished a quick recovery for the wounded. The earthquake that struck 4 provinces in Syria has caused a loss of life. Hundreds of buildings have collapsed. The old city of Aleppo, whose emblematic buildings date back millennia, was not spared. Our correspondent Hisham Wanos reports from Aleppo.
The earthquake did not spare the historic buildings of Aleppo's old town, which have withstood years of terrorist attacks. The extent of the damage to one of the country's most important archaeological sites is evident in cracked roofs and walls, collapsed facades and collapsed buildings.
The earthquake was very strong. It had a large magnitude that affected the area surrounding the citadel. It caused the collapse of many houses and caused cracks in the roofs and walls of these ancient buildings that were unable to withstand the impact of the tremor.
The disaster is huge, as the earthquake registered 7.8 magnitude on the Richter scale. In addition to the terrible human life loss, it caused serious damage to our historical archaeological heritage in the ancient city of Aleppo, whose old houses are mostly built with limestone rock.
The citadel of Aleppo was also damaged by the earthquake. It is a masterpiece of medieval Islamic fortress architecture and the UNESCO World Heritage Site. The quake caused part of the Ottoman mill to collapse, cracks and collapses in part of the Ottoman barracks and the northeastern defensive walls, and large parts of the dome of the minaret of the Ayyubid Mosque and the entrances to the citadel collapsed, among other things.
Many houses were damaged in this ancient area, including the citadel of the city, and let's hope that these historical monuments will be rebuilt and restored as soon as possible, and that the splendor of this ancient city and its historical archaeological remains will be restored.
Let us hope that the authorities and international organizations will come forward to help us repair the damage to the city of Aleppo, particularly the historic citadel of Aleppo and the historic buildings in the old city.
The earthquake also affected other heritage sites in the provinces of Hammer, Tartus, and the historic city of Palmyra. Regarding this, UNESCO expressed its concern. It said it would mobilize its experts to assess the damage and to secure and stabilize the affected sites. The historic citadel of Aleppo, like the old city, is an important part of Syria's thousands of years of civilized history. It is a heritage that remains despite the severe damage caused by the recent earthquake and the long terrorist war imposed on Syria 12 years ago. Syrians say they are sparing no effort to preserve it.
And we have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back. In the United States, another train carrying toxic materials derailed in the state of Michigan. It is the fifth such incident in the country in the last 2 weeks. The wrecked train contained toxic materials. The train collapsed in Van Buren, a suburb of Detroit. The state police said there were no injuries and the area was not under emergency conditions. However, they are urging residents to avoid the surrounding area due to the investigation. And the company responsible for the derailment that caused an environmental disaster in the state of Ohio did not attend a meeting with residents of the area, citing security concerns. In this regard, Norfolk Southern assured that by not attending the meeting, it was protecting the integrity of its workers under the pretext of alleged violent attacks by residents of East Palestine.
We are trying to give our citizens information regarding this event. Everyone is concerned. I'm concerned. However, it's not Norfolk Southern here. It's the EPA and the people who have been working with us to try to get our citizens back in their homes safely.
We all just want answers. I think that's what everybody wants here, just answers. I honestly feel that East Palestine, police, fire brigades, all the responders, they don't have the answers to give us because I don't think they know. They don't get the right answers either.
An underwater robot investigation of the Thwaites Glacier in Antarctica has yielded new information about the cracking process, a part of a study published on Wednesday in the scientific journal Nature. For 5 days, the underwater robot, christened Icefin, took images and made measurements of water temperature, salinity, and oxygen content of ocean currents. Researchers discovered an accelerated melting, not expected due to the warm, salty water penetrating the crevices. In South Africa, after a week of floods caused by heavy rains, the death toll has risen to 12. The bad weather, which is expected to last for the rest of the week, struck the east, north, and south, claiming lives in 4 of the country's 9 provinces, said the Ministry of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, COGTA. And also, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari on Thursday defended a currency swap that sparked protests and cash shortages, but ordered all small denomination 200 naira notes to remain in circulation in a bid to ease scarcities. Nigeria has been struggling with a shortage in physical cash since the Central Bank of Nigeria, the CBN, began to swap all bills of the local naira currency for new, redesigned ones, leading to a shortfall in banknotes. And we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.